My best friend stole my boyfriend. In return, I hooked up with her secret crush, Stanley, who she had been in love with for 10 years. The next morning, I left the scene with weak legs and found my ex-boyfriend had been standing outside the door all night. He asked me with red eyes, "Then what am I to you?" I shook off his hand. "When you betrayed me with my best friend, did you think about what I was to you?" Behind me, Stanley's face was gloomy. Stanley's hand was gripping me so hard that it hurt. I subconsciously pushed him. He slightly rose, and his eyes, red and by alcohol, stared at me. "Stop or continue?" His slightly hoarse and deep voice was like small stones brushing against the skin. The heat in his palm was impossible to ignore. The inner voices were constantly pulling. Countless thoughts of retreat flashed through my mind. Finally, I gritted my teeth, grabbed Stanley's tie, and kissed him fiercely. In the haze of consciousness, his lazy voice carried a smile. "So pitiful. It seems as if I'm bullying you. Stanley is really not to be underestimated." I cursed in a low voice and put on my clothes, trembling lie. While he was still asleep, I quickly left here, pushing the door open with weak feet. I was stunned in an instant. Sam looked up among the swirling smoke. His slightly red eyes were filled with bloodshot eyes, full of resentment and heartache. There were cigarette butts all over the ground by his feet. He had actually been waiting here all night. I clenched my bag and walked away as if I hadn't seen him. But Sam took a step forward and grabbed my arm. "Ginny, don't you have anything to explain to me?" "Explain what?" I frowned and pushed his hand. "You're hurting me." "Does it hurt?" "My heart hurts even more," Sam shouted. "Ginny, by doing this, what am I to you?" I looked at him coldly and sneered. "When you were with my best friend behind my back, did you think about what I was to you?" He immediately deflated. His eyes were red, and he frowned in pain. "I was drunk. I don't know what happened. I don't like her at all. You are the only one in my heart. Ginny, you can't retaliate against me like this. Don't you know that by doing this, you are degrading yourself?" "Enough, Sam." I shook off his hand. "After being with Stanley, I realized that being with you is degrading myself." He still wanted to follow me. I turned around and slapped him. "Get lost, you filthy thing." Extremely angry and using all my strength. After slapping him, I was a bit unsteady and took a few steps back, bumping into a solid embrace. When the familiar heat covered my waist, and the familiar smell came along with some chaotic and ambiguous memories, looking up and seeing Stanley's deep eyes, my face immediately burned. Lowering my eyes, embarrassed and guilty, I didn't dare to look again. Stanley. His appearance was like adding fuel to the fire for Sam. Sam swung his fist and hit Stanley. Stanley pulled me behind him, raised his hand to block Sam's punch, and kicked him in the knee. "I advise you not to go crazy here." Stanley glanced at the waiter who was hurrying over and said to Sam, "I didn't want to be embarrassed here and wanted to run." Sam immediately got up and tried to grab my wrist. Stanley was one step ahead and pulled me to his side. "I'll take you back." "Let her go. Ginny is my girlfriend." Sam clenched his fist and was eager to hit someone again. "Sam, we've broken up." His face immediately became very ugly and full of hurt. "Ginny, do you have to be like this?" I didn't answer. Stanley directly dragged me away. "What do you want?" He lit a cigarette and looked down at me. "I want you to destroy Sam. He and Cindy betrayed me. I also want them to have a hard time." Stanley's eyes were deep. "You've come to the wrong person. In the end, he only gave me a sum of money and didn't appear again for a month. However, recently, news about him has been all over the internet. All about his upcoming engagement. His engagement partner is exactly my good best friend. After 10 years of entanglement, she is finally getting what she wants. 10 years ago, our three families were still well-matched families and had close contacts. Unfortunately, due to a change, my family declined. The Tian family was also somewhat affected. Only the Fu family was flourishing. Many people were eager to curry favor with the Fu family. I don't know what means the Tian family used to make Stanley nod. For such a great event as their marriage alliance. How can I, their childhood friend, be absent? The scene was very lively. The Fu family invited many prominent families and many media. Very good. The more people, the better. On the high platform, Cindy was beaming. Stanley still had an indifferent expression, looking down on all living beings. Only when he saw me did a crack appear in his calmness. The smile on Cindy's face disappeared. She glared at me warily. Looking at Stanley, she immediately wanted to call someone to pull me away. But obviously the guests and media on the scene had already noticed me. I stood in front of the camera, smiled slightly, and took out the pregnancy test report. Stanley, I come to congratulate you on your engagement with your child. The voice was not loud, but it was enough for them to hear. There was an uproar, and the focus fell on my lower abdomen. You bitch. You seduced my fiancé. Shameless. How dare you come and ruin my engagement? Cindy's slap was with full force. The moment it landed, my head was buzzing. In the chaos, I was pulled away by Stanley. For Stanley's villa was terrifyingly quiet. I suspected that if he strangled me at this moment, no one would know. His palm was very strong, choking me so that I couldn't speak. I could only keep pushing him and struggling. When I was about to suffocate, he let go and threw me to the ground. Stanley, so many media saw you take me away. If I die here, you won't be able to explain. I subconsciously protected my stomach. His frown deepened even more. He made a call and summoned a doctor to draw my blood. The result was, of course, a foregone conclusion. I was pregnant. And he couldn't deny it. What do you want? He asked the same question as a month ago. You must not get engaged to Cindy. Also, I want to destroy Sam. Stanley took out a cigarette. Just as he lit it, he seemed to remember something and immediately extinguished it. His voice became even lower. Ginny, I gave you my answer. But now, the stakes are different. I stood up, took his hand, and placed it on my lower abdomen. Stanley, don't you want a relative? I'll give you one. His parents died early, and he was raised by his grandfather since childhood. Even with endless money and the highest status, there is still a longing for family affection hidden in his heart. Stanley's eyes became gloomy, and he withdrew his hand. Ginny, you know I hate it most when others calculate me. Just a child. Do you think it has to be you? I turned my face and kissed his hand lightly, chuckling. But you only gave me a chance, didn't you? Over the years, there have been so many who wanted to climb into his bed and use a child to climb up. But Stanley didn't give anyone a chance except me. Stanley's marriage to Cindy fell through. Although he didn't acknowledge my identity either, he at least tacitly allowed me to give birth to the child. As a condition, he took advantage of the situation to help me deal with Sam. He won't take care of me. He just wants to see how far I can push Sam on my own. That's fine. It gives me a lot of room to play. Cindy came again. As soon as she entered, she pounced on me and grabbed my hair and tore at it. You bitch. You stole my fiancé. You have no shame. It's all because of you. He was finally about to accept me. Why did you appear? Shut up. I slapped her back. I did this only because you seduced my boyfriend. Since you like Stanley, why did you set your sights on Sam? For so many years, I regarded you as a friend. But you regarded me as a fool. Cindy's face looked a bit ugly. We just had too much to drink. I didn't mean to snatch him from you. Huh? Is that so? Cindy, you've always looked down on me, right? When my family went bankrupt, you were very happy, weren't you? You've never been better than me. Finally, there's one thing you can hold over my head. You helped me and became good friends with me. It's just to satisfy your competitiveness. All these years. Seeing me so miserable. How happy you must be. But you can't have the one you love. But I found a boyfriend who is so good to me. You're not reconciled again. Is Sam a good person? He's just hooking up with you because he sees that you have resources he can use. You two are immoral. You really match each other. What a pity. Everything you were about to have will be taken away by me. Cindy was so furious that when she was carried out by a group of people, she was still cursing. Stanley heard that I was injured and specially rushed back. He forcibly took me to the hospital for a comprehensive examination. Don't worry. Your child is very tough. His face was always tense. Only when I finished all the examinations and it was confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the child did he relax. Stanley really cares about this one in my stomach. I took his hand and placed it on my lower abdomen. His movements were a bit stiff, but his face softened a lot. He was looking forward to it. The doctor said that the baby in the womb also needs the company of mom and dad. He can feel it. I gently leaned on his shoulder. Can you come more often and accompany me and the child? Stanley didn't answer me. But from that day on, he would come every day. You snatched Keisheng's order? While eating. Hearing him say this, I almost choked. He frowned and handed me the water cup. Yes. Stanley gave me some rights of a small company. It has business intersections with Keisheng, the family business of Sam's family. So I gave him the first gift. Isn't it okay? You promised me I could do this. You just want to destroy Sam. So you're using my name to mess with the Pei family's business? Stanley looked down at me. You've been making a lot of small moves outside in my name these days. Ginny. What are you up to? I just want to deal with Sam. His gaze made me very uncomfortable. I stood up and excused myself by saying I didn't feel well and wanted to leave. He grabbed my hand. Is it only Sam you want to deal with? His sharp gaze seemed to have already seen through everything. Just because Sam cheated on you, do you have to go to such lengths? Ginny. I don't like women who lie. My wrist was pinched so painfully by him that I looked at him with teary eyes and cried out in pain. He did loosen his grip, but obviously he wouldn't let it go so easily. Today, I can't get through this. I want to deal with the entire Pei family. Not just Sam. He looked at me and motioned for me to continue. I was never sincere with Sam. Originally, I wanted to marry him and infiltrate the Pei family. But then Cindy made a fuss. So I took the opportunity to find you and wanted to use your hand to deal with the Pei family. Reason? The Pei family killed my adoptive parents. Sam's father drunk driving and killed my adoptive father. After that, he used money to settle it. My adoptive mother refused and was beaten severely by them. Without money for treatment, she was slowly exhausted and died. I was too young at that time and couldn't do anything. But when I met Sam, it was as if heaven was telling me to take revenge. He looked at me silently and didn't speak. I knelt in front of him for a long time, crying and pleading for a long time. Finally, I got his tacit consent. My means of dealing with the Pei family became more and more intense. From snatching orders at the beginning to maliciously blocking his shipments later. The news that the Fu family is going to deal with the Pei family is spreading more and more widely. Those who are on good terms with the Pei family dare not offend the Fu family and keep away from him. Those who have always been at odds with the Pei family are even more taking the opportunity to hit a person when he is down. Negative news about the Pei family emerges in an endless stream. All industries are targeted and stagnant. I even united the bank in the name of the Fu family, and cut off the loan to the Pei family. Pinching his lifeline. The Pei family is like a fish on the chopping board. Being picked off scales little by little and struggling desperately in the hot oil pan. When I went for a prenatal checkup, I met Sam. He looked much haggard. His eyes staring at me across the crowd were painful and blazing. Are you really pregnant with his child? When he saw my slightly bulging belly, his clenched fist was trembling. I asked in reply with a smile. Weren't you outside that night? Why? He grabbed my arm restlessly. But soon he was pulled away by the bodyguard beside me. Why did you go with Stanley? Do you love him? Is he in your heart? What about me? We have been together for so long. Just because I got drunk and was confused for a moment. Can we never go back? I watched him go crazy and hysterical. I just asked him one sentence. Since you were outside that night, why didn't you stop me? He stared at me blankly. And even he was ashamed to answer. Because you are afraid of Stanley and the Fu family. So you can give me up. In that case, why can't I give you up? He opened his mouth in embarrassment. So, you don't love me at all. Do you really have a grudge against our family? Is it you who has been dealing with our family during this period? Is this your purpose for approaching me at first and now approaching Stanley? I looked at him pitifully. But I couldn't give him any love he wanted to see. His expression finally turned into despair. Ginny, I have a secret to tell you. Can you let them leave first? What secret? You take revenge on the Pei family only for the sake of your adoptive parents. But you don't know that there is someone else who has a deep hatred with your family. He said it as if it were true. After thinking for a long time, I still chose to talk to him alone. The two bodyguards who followed were unwilling. They wanted to stop me. But they didn't dare to do anything for fear of my belly. They could only call Stanley. When Sam and I walked to the intersection, he hesitated to speak. When he saw the approaching vehicle, his eyes flickered slightly. When I realized it, my neck ached and I fainted. Sam ambushed me and locked me in a completely strange place. When I woke up, I saw him sitting by the bed. His eyes lifeless. What do you want to do? He touched my face and chuckled. Don't be afraid. Ginny. I'm not as cruel as you. I can't bear to touch you. But this child can't stay. I can never watch you give birth to another man's child. He held hot water and forcibly pried open my mouth. Be good. It will be all right after taking the medicine. I don't mind if you have been with others. I don't mind if you harm our family. I just want you. No. I shook my head desperately. In the struggle, hot water spilled all over me. Why? Why do you protect this child? He angrily smashed the cup. Ginny. Don't tell me that you really fell in love with Stanley. So what? This sentence seriously stimulated him. Sam pounced on me. Impossible. You hate me. Then you should not fall in love with him even more. Do you know? The door was kicked open with a bang. Stanley stood at the door with a gloomy face, followed by a group of people. Sam's face changed greatly. He pulled me and wanted to leave. I refused. He shouted anxiously, Ginny, do you really want to stay by his side? He is not a good person at all. Do you know that he is the one who harms you? Sam couldn't finish that half sentence. A big bloody hole in his neck gushed out blood like a fountain, instantly dyeing his clothes red. He opened his eyes and struggled to utter a few broken syllables. Then he fell heavily to the ground. Sam is dead. Stanley killed him. His expression was as calm as if he had crushed an ant. He calmly put away his weapon and walked towards me. My body stiffened and stayed in place. I just felt that the bloody smell was disgusting. It made me lose all my senses. There was only bright red left in my head. When Stanley came to hold me, I suddenly seemed to turn on a switch. Instinctively, I dodged and trembled all over. I was afraid. I was afraid of a murderer who had just killed someone. Stanley paused. He took off his bloody coat, wiped the blood on his hands, and then picked me up again. I let him hold me and accept the doctor's examination blankly. I was carried home blankly, changed into pajamas, and ate what he fed me. As the night grew late, when he was about to turn off the light and go back to his room, I suddenly raised my hand and hugged him. Don't go. I'm afraid. Stanley obediently stopped and hugged me, wrapping me tightly with a quilt. Don't be afraid. I'm here. I buried my head in his arms and cried in a low voice. You killed someone. What should we do? You will be arrested. What about me and the baby? Why do you have such a thing? That's illegal. He listened quietly as I finished crying. and wiped away the tears on my face. Don't think so much. You will be safe and sound. Nine Sands' death is like a stone thrown into the sea. Just a few waves rise and soon it is calm again. Stanley was very cautious and wouldn't let me go out again. He took care of the Pei family's affairs himself. Because after the last incident, I was in an unstable state of mind, and the child was a bit unstable. Stanley spent more time here to accompany me. He even moved his office here, under the repeated suggestions of the doctor. He finally agreed to let me go out. However, every time there must be bodyguards following me closely. I saw Cindy again. She was holding a man's hand and the two of them were choosing clothes. When she turned her head and saw me, her face darkened. What a coincidence. She snorted coldly. Why, with your stomach so big, haven't you become his official partner yet? No matter how much you compete with me, you are just an improper one. He only wants the illegitimate child in your belly. After you give birth, you will be discarded like garbage by him. She showed the ring on her hand. See? I'm about to get married. Unlike you, I am properly married. I expressionlessly went up and snatched her ring. Cindy immediately rushed up and shouted, "Give it back to me." However, my bodyguard was quick-eyed and quick-handed and restrained her. This ring is not bad. I want it. Give her money. Pooh. Who wants your money? Give it back to me. You don't deserve to wear my ring. I looked at her with a smile. Scene R. You have to understand that it's not only Yue who can snatch things. As long as I set my eyes on something, you are not my opponent at all. So don't show off in front of me, or you will definitely regret it. Stanley looked at the ring on my hand. I deliberately raised my hand and asked him, "Is it beautiful? Why did you provoke her again? What's wrong? Do you feel sorry for her?" I took off the ring and threw it aside. She provoked me first. She said the child in my belly is an illegitimate child, and said that after I give birth, you won't want me anymore. Tears fell with a sour feeling in my eyes. The more I said, the more wronged I felt. And I couldn't stop crying. I know you only care about the child in my belly. I am just a tool for giving birth to him. Stanley's hand covered my face and said, "Don't cry." I cried even more fiercely. I know you won't give me a ring. So can't I just snatch it myself? Am I not worthy? Do you think I'm not worthy in your heart? I vaguely heard Stanley sigh. My hand was held by him, and the ring slipped onto my finger. He looked extremely serious when putting on the ring for me, even if he won't marry me. After all, he can't hide his heart. I insisted on attending Cindy's engagement banquet. Stanley was opposed to it. There were many people and it was chaotic at the banquet. He was afraid that something might happen. But I pestered him so much that he agreed to accompany me to attend. It was unprecedented for Stanley to attend with a female companion. It was almost equivalent to him tacitly acknowledging my identity. And the attitudes of others towards me also changed. What bad idea are you brewing again? When I looked at Cindy, who was wearing a small dress and was shining brightly among the crowd with a solemn expression, Stanley held my hand. "No. I'm here to send blessings today." I smiled innocently. Cindy saw me but didn't say anything, standing in front of me and Stanley. She still had a cold face. "Congratulations on your engagement. This is your engagement gift. Mr. Fu and I picked it for a long time. You will like it." I deliberately wore the ring snatched from her and handed her the gift. Cindy didn't take it. Perfy Ang quickly took it and expressed his gratitude with a smile all over his face. I am not familiar with the people at the banquet. Instead, many of them came for Stanley. They all said flattering words, and things about business. I was too lazy to listen. So I excused myself to go to the restroom and take a walk by myself. The bodyguards arranged by Stanley followed me ostentatiously. This was definitely a safe enough environment. But dangers still came. I didn't even notice how it happened. Clearly I was in the toilet. But suddenly I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was already in an unfamiliar small dark room. 77 is someone I know. Sam's father. He looks more than 10 years older than when I saw him last time. It seems that the family changes and the pain of losing his son have hit him hard. He has been walking around anxiously, looking at his watch from time to time, as if waiting for someone to come. When there was a noise outside, his body tensed up and he immediately moved to my side. The lighter in his hand could ignite the fuse of the bomb tied to me any time. The door was kicked open by Stanley and his people. His face was very gloomy. Even worse than last time. Indeed. Sam still had some softness towards me and wouldn't directly take my life. But Pei is different. He regards me as the murderer who killed his son. The Pei family is also finished. He is directly risking his life. Stanley. If you don't want to see your son and your woman die in front of you, immediately withdraw your people. Let's have a good talk, just the two of us. Pei's hatred for Stanley is no less than mine. It's just a pity that he has always been afraid and has no way to start. Now that he can hold his lifeline, Pei certainly won't let go of such a good opportunity. Kneel down and cripple yourself. He laughed nervously. Damn it. You made me have no descendants. I will cripple you. However, soon he couldn't laugh anymore because Stanley didn't do as he said. Instead, he looked at him coldly with his always condescending and contemptuous gaze. Stanley. Will you kneel? Don't you care about the lives of your woman and child? I'll kill her right now. Do you believe me? He violently pulled my hair, but the hand holding the lighter trembled violently. I'll die with you all. Stanley walked over step by step without any sign of fear. Light it up. Stanley. Damn you. Stanley rushed over quickly and grabbed Pei's wrist. At the same time, the people he brought also broke through the windows and doors and entered, engaging in a fight with the people of the Pei family. Stanley's subordinates untied me and wanted to pull me away. But I refused and ran directly in Stanley's direction. I have something I must do. Now, when I saw the sharp blade stabbing at him, I quickly went up and hugged him, taking a knife for him. Stanley roared, held me in his arms, snatched the man's knife and pierced his hand. Are you crazy? Ginny. He held me, and his heart beating violently out of worry was so clear. It's okay. It's just a small injury. Your child is fine. He held me and examined me carefully, and said seriously, you can't be in trouble either. Never be so naughty again next time. How dare you rush over with such a big knife? I nestled in his arms. I'm afraid. I can't let anything happen to you either. Stanley didn't say anything more, but just hugged me tightly. 12 The Pei family is completely gone, and everything about them has disappeared without a trace. After 2 incidents, Stanley would not agree to let me go out anymore no matter what. As my belly grew bigger and bigger, he stayed here for a longer and longer time. Later, he simply worked from home. No matter how busy he was, Stanley would set aside some time to tell stories to the baby, as the doctor said. The baby had already had fetal movements, as if familiar with Stanley's voice. Every time it was time to tell a story, the baby would kick me in the belly. Stanley would put his hand on the slightly bulging place, just like greeting him. Only at this time would he show the tenderness that he didn't even notice himself. Stanley. The baby will be born in another month. Have you thought of a name for him? Ki-an. Stanley's cheek was against the baby and said, just be safe and happy all your life. 13 Late at night. Stanley slept soundly. I quietly got up and walked towards his study. I skillfully opened the password and went straight to his computer. After unlocking it many times, I finally found what I wanted. After sending out the information, I was about to put things back in place and go back to the room, but the light suddenly came on. Stanley was standing at the door, looking at me with a gloomy face. I was stunned on the spot, and soon calmed down. I turned off the computer and walked towards him. Why did you wake up? It's so late. Do you still have to work overtime? The soup you cooked. I didn't drink it. Stanley grabbed my hand. forcibly took off that ring and kicked out a small information transmitter from it. A ring snatched back from Cindy is really a good thing. He threw it on the table and pulled me to the computer. It was a surveillance video. How I entered the room just now. Copied the data. Transferred it to the transmitter and sent it out. The evidence was conclusive and there was no way to deny it. It turned out that he had been suspecting me. No, or rather, he had been on guard against me from the very beginning. Only at a certain time did he relax his guard and give me an opportunity. Having sex with him, getting pregnant with his child, cooking for him, creating a home atmosphere, and taking a knife for him in danger. All of this was to win his trust. But I deeply know that Stanley is a suspicious person. When his business starts to have problems one after another, he will definitely suspect and search for people who have access to this information. Naturally, I can't escape either. Only, it was faster than I expected. When did you start plotting, Ginny? Stanley's emotions had always been very stable. Even though he had just discovered my betrayal, he still asked calmly. If it weren't for the fact that the strength in his hand could almost crush my shoulder. I laughed. There would be times when he was so indecisive and insisted on an answer. Okay. Since he asked, I'll tell him. At this point. Can't you guess? Stanley. It was false from the very beginning. Stanley's expression finally showed cracks. Sam is your pawn. I am also your pawn. Your goal is not just the Pei family at all. Ginny. The object of your revenge is me. I didn't hide it at all. At this step, there was no need. 14, yes. Stanley. I think you should still remember how you forced my parents to death. Brought down the Sioux family. And grew stronger step by sucking the blood of our family. Do you think I was too young at that time and didn't know anything? You are wrong. Your biggest mistake is not eradicating the weeds. You let me live. So you must die. I picked up the ashtray on the table and threw it at Stanley. He quickly dodged and twisted my wrist instead. Cindy is your accomplice. You two didn't turn against each other at all. You just put on a show. During this period, transactions frequently had problems and were chased by the police. It was you who stole my information. Stanley. Do you think a person like you can get others' true hearts? How could Cindy like you? You also killed her brother. For your own selfish desires and interests. In order to revive the Fu family. You used the relationship of old family friends to harm the Tian family and our family. Thinking it was flawless. But the net of heaven is wide. Your retribution should come. When Stanley was 18 years old, his family suffered a sudden disaster. He supported the Fu family alone. My parents and the Tian family, thinking of their child who was a good friend, helped him from time to time. They were even less guarded against Stanley. So they were tricked by him. The Tian family pulled out in time. But they also suffered a lot. But our family was deeply in debt. My dad couldn't swallow this breath. He decided to report Stanley's illegal activities. But the news was leaked. So, Stanley created an accident. Since then, I have become an orphan, and Cindy has also lost her mother. At that time, I was just a 13-year-old child. My adoptive parents who adopted me had received the kindness of my parents. Entrusted by my father before his death to take care of me, they told me the truth about my parents' death. They have also been actively thinking of ways to avenge my parents. But later, they died. Ostensibly, it was the Pei family who made the move. But in fact, it was Stanley who used others to do his dirty work. He can't tolerate anyone who can threaten him. I know that he has been watching me all the time. From middle school to university. Those eyes have never disappeared. Every moment. Even when I am sleeping. So, since I was young, I have learned to disguise myself. I have been thinking about how I can take revenge. Cindy has been trying to get close to Stanley all these years. The so-called lover is the best shortcut. It's a pity that after showing kindness for so many years, Stanley has always been indifferent to her. Until Cindy accidentally discovered that Stanley was carrying my photo with him. How ridiculous. The person who killed all my family members and has been watching me all the time actually has such feelings for me. So, we came up with a plan. Admittedly, this plan requires great sacrifice and even involves an innocent life. But other than this, we have no better way. 15. Create an accident to meet Sam. Cindy deliberately leads him to be affectionate and then lets me bump into them. And I also have the opportunity and reason to appear in front of Stanley and get pregnant with this child. Relatives are the only breakthrough to deal with Stanley. So no matter how much I hate him, I must keep the blood of my enemy. Fortunately, although it is difficult, everything goes smoothly. I know Stanley will find out. But it doesn't matter. He is doomed. Why choose the Pei family? Why must the father and son of the Pei family die at Stanley's hands? In addition to the Pei family having the blood of my adoptive parents on their hands, it is also because they have the ability to obtain the most core evidence. Stanley is not a fool. He will not get rid of the Pei family just for me. He has long felt the threat of the Pei family. He wants to eradicate them completely. Unfortunately, we found Mrs. Pai one step ahead of him. Knowing that her husband and son had both died at Stanley's hands, she did not hesitate to hand over the evidence to us. The police could have arrested Stanley long ago. Those evidences are enough to make him die in prison. Now, holding back and not acting is just to lure the snake out of its hole and uproot him completely. Even if he finds out now, it's too late. 16. Stanley took me and evacuated overnight. Several of his bases have been destroyed. What a high-spirited person. Now he is like a stray dog. The long escape has made everyone very tired. Stanley has been very silent. But he has not let go of my hand. We got lost in the forest. The car got stuck in the mud. We had to walk out of this forest. As the fog grew thicker, the sight also became blurred. Suddenly, the birds around flew up. Stanley pulled me behind him. Sure enough, someone was attacking sneakily. The scene was once in chaos. The familiar warmth covered my hand. Come with me. That was Cindy's voice. She came to save me. I pulled out a small knife and stabbed Stanley's hand. When he let go in pain, I quickly shook him off and ran away with Cindy. Ginny, come back to me. Stanley's low roar was extremely painful, accompanied by gunshots. If you dare to leave, I will kill you. But I didn't look back. I am not afraid of death. I don't want to stay by his side. We escaped. But in the depths of the jungle, there were only me and Cindy left. The others were all lost. Cindy, do you have your phone with you? Yes. She took out her phone and gave it to me. Her face was extremely pale. Only then did I see that her hands were full of blood. What's wrong with you? No. Nothing. Before she finished speaking, she had already fallen to the ground. Blood gushed out from the wound on her back and dyed her clothes red. How could this happen? When did it happen? Why didn't you say anything? How painful it must have been to run all the way like this. She looked at me and forced out a weak smile with difficulty. But blood kept gushing out of her mouth, making her voice broken and indistinct. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I don't feel pain. I hugged her tightly, but couldn't wipe off the blood no matter what. Shinar, please. Hold on. Hold on. I called the police. The police will come soon. Ginny. Ginny. She held my hand with difficulty. Those eyes were just staring at me. I know that she has so much to say. Life is like sand in the hand. No matter how hard you hold it, you can't stop it from slipping away. Ginny. The wind carried away her weak voice. And suddenly there was only silence left in my ears. She slowly closed her eyes in my arms. Her body slowly became cold, and there was no longer any sign of life. I couldn't keep her. Perhaps heaven never intended to leave us a way out. I didn't wait for the police. But Stanley came instead. 17. This is probably his most embarrassing moment. His clothes are tattered and stained with blood and filth. He comes step by step, like a Shura from hell. He has come to take my life. The feeling of suffocation is not terrible. Having experienced a living death. On the contrary, I feel that death is a kind of relief. I am happy to be reunited with Sinner soon. But that tear fell on my face. The one in my belly seemed to have a sensation, and suddenly kicked me. I opened my eyes and saw that Stanley's bloodshot eyes were actually filled with tears. He just looked at me and slowly released his hand that was choking my neck. Ginny. If it weren't for the child, I would definitely kill you right now. He glanced at Cindy in my arms, trying to pull her away and take me with him. I refused to let go no matter what. He didn't dare to use too much force because of the child in my belly. During the dispute, Stanley's expression changed and he put a dagger against my neck. Don't talk. He watched the surroundings warily. Now, even I heard it. The police finally came and they were surrounding the place. Stanley. You are surrounded. Release the hostage immediately. He held me tightly and refused to let go. The surrounding dark encirclement was getting closer little by little. Stanley's struggle now was just putting up a last-ditch resistance. Stanley. You can't escape. I sneered coldly. Extremely carefree. Ginny. His gloomy voice rang in my ear. Do you want me to die? If I die today, you will accompany me to hell. There was a sharp pain in my neck as the sharp blade pierced flesh and blood. But I wasn't afraid. As long as he dies and as long as the evil behind him is eradicated, my life will be worthwhile. The police's warnings were his death knell. I closed my eyes and waited for everything to end. The pain in my abdomen suddenly intensified. Without warning, I cried out in pain. I covered my stomach and felt the warm current flowing down my legs. I couldn't even stand steadily. At the moment when I was about to bump into the sharp blade that should have taken my life was quickly withdrawn. Instead, that hand firmly supported my arm. My heart skipped a beat. This is the moment. The swift sound brushed past my ear. Stanley's fall was very soft. But blood splashed all over me. Warm. And quickly cooled, leaving an indelible mark on my body. It wasn't until many people rushed up and until someone supported me, it was about to take me away from the scene that I suddenly realized, Stanley was dead. He fell on the grass behind him. His open eyes were still looking in my direction. His hand was raised and stretched out towards me. And then stopped in my dread. The pain in my abdomen swept over again. I was so painful that I collapsed on the ground. My mind a complete blank. When I was discharged from the hospital, the remaining forces behind Stanley had all been captured. There were extensive reports on the internet. And the attention was unprecedented. Stanley's accomplices had been glorious for most of their lives. Finally, they had to spit out all the blood they had sucked. None of those who do evil can end well. And finally, I can hold a bouquet of Yanran roses that Cindy loves the most and go to her grave to tell her this good news. 2 butterflies landed gracefully on her tombstone. In a blur of tears, I saw the girl in a plaited kid and colored dress, and wearing a butterfly hairpin skipping over and taking my hand. Come on. Let's play. Let's play. Let's play. Let's play. Let's play.